How you doing, everyone? Von Gathings here. I thank you all for watching. If you can, after you're done watching, please subscribe, like, share, comment, but best of all, be informed. This is more so about you getting information and doing whatever you want to do with it. Give it to somebody else. You keep it for yourself, but just be informed. That's the biggest thing I want you to take from all these videos I'm making. So, as you know, we're still reviewing the book franchise, and we're on chapter 2. Actually, last week was chapter 1. The week before was the intro summary. But I called it Salt and Pepper Business, and I'm going to tell you why it's called that. Just bear with me, and you'll kind of understand why. And I kind of spelled business funny on purpose because I like to be creative. So let's start with the Holy Week Uprising and the death of Dr. King. What is the Holy Week Uprising? So the Holy Week Uprising were violent riots. Let me zoom in. Violent riots that took place following the death of Dr. King in the year 68. It was one of the most devastating periods of civil disobedience the U.S. has seen since the Civil War. And so last episode, if you watched with me, we talked about the Civil Rights Act being passed in 1964, and then 1968, Dr. King is killed in Memphis, Tennessee, speaking on behalf of sanitation workers who were being discriminated, treated unfairly because of their race. And these are just some of the pictures right here of the uprisings. Here's another picture. And then here's just some of the stats I pulled up. So nearly 200 cities rioted. 27,000 people were arrested. 3,000 people were hurt or injured. And cities experienced white flight, meaning white entrepreneurs, white residents who were making money for the community, helping the collective wealth of the community. They left because they were tired of their business being bombed and attacked and being harassed. So they left the community. But when they left, it left a void in the community. So there wasn't any businesses there that was helping with the tax base of the community. Or homeowners left, landowners, property owners left. And this is how you got these communities that have nothing, no businesses there, nobody owning homes. They're just like now the inner cities are completely devastated from this incident. And last chapter we talked about how the suburbs were created. This is another reason how suburbs were created, because the whites, they left after 1968. So McDonald's, and this is another picture of DC after the Holy Week uprising. A building just burned completely to the ground. So during the election of 1968, the conversations that took place asked, how does America move on after Dr. King? And many activists, politicians, organizers believed that for Black America, it needed to be some type of push for economic mobility. We're past the policy stage. What can we do about economics? And then the debates start coming in. Do we need more social programs? Do we need blacks to be independent? And we'll talk about that the next episode. But white business owners, they left the city, as we just talked about, and the McDonald saw an opportunity to capitalize on that. So they're moving in these inner cities where these businesses and establishments used to be, and they are building more McDonald's. And then now the benefit of that is you have walking distance McDonald's that are walking distance from people's place of residence. And this is how, if you go to inner cities, you notice that there are McDonald's probably a 3 mile radius, 3 or 4 mile radius from one another. So, for example, in Chicago, you got a McDonald's on 27th and King Drive, 26th and King Drive, one of them. And then you have one right on 35th in Michigan. Then you have another one on 47th in Cottage Grove. So they're not really far apart from each other. This is how that happened. They took advantage of the white flight that was going on. So you had a gentleman by the name of Roland Jones. Roland Jones was an Chicago-based consultant for McDonald's, and he was given the task to find black people who can get a customer base and help increase sales among these inner cities. So Roland found a gentleman named Herman Petty, who we talked about on my very first episode. Petty was black, the first black person to own a McDonald's, and the McDonald's was on 65th and Stony Island. It's still there, and it has a platter that says the first McDonald's owned by a black person, Herman Petty. And Herman Petty, he was a resident of the Woodline area, 65th and Evans, to be exact. He was a military veteran. He was a military veteran, a former bus driver, a barbershop owner. He was a blue collar guy. But the cool thing about him was he was really like, he was kind of political in a way. He knew how to communicate with all sorts of people and man relationships with, people who gang leaders. I'm sorry, gang members, wealthy entrepreneurs, investors, and he was very political, and he knew how to cultivate relationships, and he was very progressive. He was seen as a trailblazer for McDonald's restaurants because he allowed women to not only work at McDonald's but become managers in the McDonald's, and that wasn't heard of in the '60s because women, they were going through this phase where they're trying to be more than just domestics and teachers. And he also had initiatives for veterans who were returning from Vietnam and were returning back from the war to have jobs at McDonald's. So he was a trailblazer. So Petty, let's talk about salt and pepper relationships. This is the most important thing I want you to take away. So salt and pepper relationships were these relationships when white investors financially supported black entrepreneurs. Petty, he built these relationships with wealthy white investors, and they were unstructured. McDonald's had nothing to do with these relationships. But what was going on was these really wealthy white investors, they were saying, hey, we will pay for overhead costs, pay for payments that you can't cover. We'll give you loans as long as you produce, as long as you're a presence in your restaurant. And it was working at first. But then what happened was the relationship started to go sour. The investors started to get money hungry as more establishments opened up and let people who weren't on a friendly basis with these investors started making relationships with them. So they stopped paying for overhead costs, whatever overhead costs couldn't be covered. They stopped making payments. Stopped just lending money. They started double backing on their promises. And when closing time came, they would take the money out the drawers. So they only wanted money, and they wanted it fast, and they wasn't going to keep on their promises. And McDonald's started to intervene on that. So that's what a salt and pepper relationship is, and that's what the book called it. Not me. I didn't make that name. So then another battle that Petty had to solve was with the Stones. That's a Chicago-based street gang. They were really their ideologies came from the Nation of Islam and Black nationalist thought, and the Stones used to kind of hang around. They kind of hung around the restaurant where the old owner was there. They used to punk the old owner. They used to punk him into giving jobs, and they used to just hang around there. But the problem was when they were hanging around these restaurants, the customers got afraid, and when the customers got afraid, business started going down. And they just wanted their guys to have jobs. They just were just they had really nothing to do, and they tried being productive in the community. Like their leader Jeff Ford, he launched like some job training programs, things to get Black men working, and it didn't work for whatever reason. And if they were employed, they'll get arrested because they were caught doing things outside of work. So the relationships weren't really good. But Petty, he negotiated with the Stones, who were still kind of hanging around his restaurant. He asked them, "Hey, can you kind of repopulate and go somewhere else?" And they respected him because he was a Black man. He was known in the community, and he was running this McDonald's. And eventually, he started hiring some of them. They started to become gainfully employed in the restaurants. I can't say about any other location, but the Stones, they grew a respect for Petty. So that was another uphill battle Petty had to fight. So as Petty is successful, he's just killing it as a. Let me try to zoom in. This is the best I can do. He's killing it as a Okay. Sorry about that if you can't see. He's killing it as a owner of the. He's the first Black McDonald's owner. He's killing it. I could just talk. What started to happen was he opened up another restaurant on 76 and Vincennes that's still open to this day. He started selling. He started making sales up to 75% from the last owner. So he drove sales up tremendously. And black franchises start to outsell the white franchises by grand numbers because blacks they wanted to support their own if it was a Black owned McDonald's, and they also wanted to that's all they had pretty much. They didn't have like access to other like healthy food options like people in other communities did. But one of the big issues that started as sales are going up and all of these things, and more McDonald's are being built in inner cities, that the owners started to feel much more neglected. They started to feel like they're doing their thing. They are making grand amount of money for McDonald's, but they're not getting the respect. They're not getting pats on the back. They're being ignored in the corporate headquarters, and they created this organization called the National Black McDonald's Owners Association. Sorry about that. And that's the picture of them right there. And that was a group that kind of was like the NAACP for McDonald's owners. They got to congregate. They got to do all these things to support one another. So pretty much that's it. I have another episode coming very, very soon. But if you can, support, share, like, but best of all, be informed. Follow me on social media if you want more information. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. But thank you, and I will see you soon.